What's up guys, Drew back again with Princess Craft RV, and today we are out on the lot taking a look at the appliances and the accessories on the Eagle Cap 1200. Starting right up front here, you're going to notice a couple access doors. The first one is essentially just going to be a maintenance panel. It's going to give you access to the forwardmost plumbing of the unit in case in the event down the road you need to do any maintenance or fix any issues that you may have down here. It's nice to be able to easily access that. Of course, being at this end of the camper, without this door you would not be able to do so. Right next to that is going to be our battery compartment. Now this unit is going to utilize two Group 27 size batteries, whether that's going to be a lead acid battery, an AGM, lithium, whatever. We have one here for the demonstration purposes of the unit. This particular customer is having it upgraded to two AGMs, which we surely can do for you if you'd like. But other things to note, if you're just going with that kind of base capacity, it will be two flooded or lead acid batteries, and those do carry a little bit of maintenance. Every 90 days, we're gonna wanna remove the vent panels from the top of those batteries. We're gonna inspect the water level and refill with distilled water. That's gonna be best for the battery. That's gonna keep that in the best shape for the longest amount of time. Now moving on here, we do have our swing out jacks. A couple things with this. Now this is traditionally a wirelessly controlled system. We'll get to the operation of the remote and how to use that when we get further into the presentation. But we also have swing outs installed on this particular camper. What that does is that it allows us to go ahead and within our stance. Reason being is if you're driving a bigger truck with dually hips or something like that, we need that extra space to actually get underneath the camper. Those operate very easily. You have a little spring nut here. We're just gonna go ahead and push that up. With the weight off the camper, we'll then be able to swing that in the desired position. Now these also do have a manual drive. What you're gonna find here is if you remove this cap, and say that we had one jack, a singular jack not working, or a complete power loss situation, either way, we will still be able to load and unload the camper in an emergency. So we're gonna go ahead and disengage the motor, which is just pulling this lever down. And we're gonna use the included crank handle to be able to just actually crank this up or down manually. Not something that you want to make a habit of course, but it will be there to get you out of a bind. Another thing to talk about while we are here is going to be the slide outs of the unit. Of course, you have 3 slide outs here. It's very important that we maintain those correctly. What that's going to mean for you is every 90 days, we're going to use a dry silicone lubricant here to go ahead and lubricate these tracks. Now, generally, those will come in an aerosol can. What we'll do is we'll spray the track down, top to bottom, left to right of each slide, and then we're going to run that slide in or out to distribute that lubricant a couple times. If we do that, we'll be good for the next 90 days. Also, on that same schedule, we're going to want to go ahead and lubricate these slide out seals. We're going to use a different product. Generally, we recommend an RV grade seal conditioner. Again, generally sold in an aerosol can. You just go ahead and spray them down. Now, keep in mind, these do wrap the full outside of the slide. So we're going to go ahead and spray those down, wipe any excess off, and we're going to be good to go. All right, guys, a ton of stuff going on here at the driver's side rear of the unit. First thing up is going to be our furnace. Now this isn't really what we would consider a customer serviceable unit, so there's not going to be much after sale maintenance for it. The biggest thing you can do for the appliance is going to be protecting it from the intrusion of mud daubers and flying insects. We're going to do that with the aftermarket bug screens that are available. Other than that, just make sure that you're not restricting this flow of the appliance, especially when it's running. It does blow very hot air and it will generally melt whatever you put in front of it. So just keep that in mind. And then if we drop down here to the generator compartment, now there is an auxiliary switch on the inside. We're going to go ahead and get to that when we do get to the inside, but you'll see that there is also a switch out here. This is generally covered by the service panel, so it's not generally going to be operated that way. The reason why we have it removed today is if you could look past that on-off switch, you're going to find a yellow breaker. Now that's going to be a famously soft breaker, not in the amount of resistance, so to speak, that it takes to trip, but it's generally just soft to the touch. So what happens is our customers will be tooling down the road. They'll hit a bump big enough to actually trip that breaker. They'll get to their destination, fire up that generator, it'll run as normal, but it's actually the outputting power breaker, so it's not going to really do what it's supposed to do. We bring that up just because it does happen so frequently, so if you do encounter that issue, that's of course would be the first thing to check. Other than that, there's going to be a separate service manual from Onan for this particular unit. We're going to use that to make sure we're following their maintenance guidelines in terms of oil changes and things like that. And then if we move over here to the water heater here, now this is a 6-gallon capacity water heater. This is going to run strictly on propane gas with 12-volt direct spark ignition. Now the manufacturer has some very specific recommendations when it does come to operating the unit. Number one is going to be if it is going to be in storage for more than 7 days, it's very important that we do not only drain the rest of the unit, but we drain the water heater separate of those other systems. So what we're going to do when we want to accomplish that is we are going to cut the overall inflow of water to the unit as a whole. So if we're utilizing the potable water, we're going to go ahead and just flip off that 12-volt water switch. If we're utilizing the city water connection, we're just going to go ahead and shut that off at the valve. So with the unit as a whole depressurized, we can then depressurize the water heater separately. So what we're going to do is go to the hot side of any fixture. On this particular unit, you have an outside shower right here on the other side. That would be the easiest place to accomplish this. So we're just going to open up that hot side of the plumbing. You can see a little bit of water, maybe a little bit of steam come from that. Once we've done that, the unit is depressurized and it is safe to drain. So once we've depressurized it, we have our anode rod and drain plug here. This is going to be during operation inserted there. What we're going to do when we're draining it is we're going to grab a 1.16" socket, ratchet, and extension, and we're just going to go ahead and back that out. As long as we've given the unit enough time to cool, we're not going to have any issues. We're going to go ahead and remove this. The remaining 5.5 to 6 gallons of water is going to evacuate the tank from this location. Now on the flip side of things, when we are returning the unit back to service, number one is of course we need to go ahead and put the anode rod back in. Not a bad idea. You may have to give it a couple wraps so with Teflon tape to keep that watertight. But once that's in place, we need to prime or pump 6 gallons of water into the water heater before we start heating it. So again, we're going to go to the hot side of any water fixture. In this case, it's going to be the outside shower. We're going to open that up after we've repressurized the unit. So go ahead and flip on that 12-volt water pump or turn on that city water valve. Once we've done that, again, we're going to hop over to that outside shower. We're going to turn the hot side of that shower on. We're going to see a little bit of a different scenario at this point. You're going to see a lot more water, but you're also going to see a lot more air. Of course, what's happening is displacing the air that has now filled the tank and refilling it with water. That flow is going to be very spitty or interrupted, and we'll know that we are full here at the water heater when that flow normalizes completely and runs as designed. Once that happens, we can go ahead and flip on the propane water heater switch and start heating our water in that capacity. Now this is also an excellent candidate for those aftermarket bug screens. You can see we have some louvers here as well as some grating that we're going to need to further protect from that intrusion. And then if we come up top here, we can go ahead and take a look at our water ports. Now here on the left side, we have our non-pressurized or potable water. That's going to be how we fill that onboard water tank. If we're doing any boondocking or off-grid camping, of course, that's going to be the candidate that we use. Once we've filled that up, we cap it off and we just flip on that 12-volt water pump, and that's going to pressurize that system, draw that water up from the tank to the fixtures and make it usable. And then if we take a look to the right of that, we have our city water connection. City water is what you're going to use in the capacity of an RV park or anytime that you do have access to full-time running water. What's most important with this connection is going to be water pressure. Now water pressure, our city water is pressurized directly from the line. More often than not, it happens to be over pressurized for what these units are rated for. Generally, you'll find that these are rated for a working water pressure in between 50 and 75 PSI. And generally we will need a water pressure regulator to keep it within those specifications. One is included with your purchase. When you do go ahead to use this, you're going to hook this directly onto the water source. So we're going to screw that onto the fixture or spigot. We're going to go ahead and hook the spigot side of the hose to the regulator. And lastly, we make this connection on the camper by rotating this trailer bound hose connection. All right, guys, that takes us down here to our bayonet style fitting. This is going to be our dump location. Now, our valves are going to be located underneath the basement, so we're just going to go over how to connect here. This is a standard bayonet style fitting, as I said. If we go ahead and remove the cap and then we take a look at our sewage hose, you can see that they do show, or they do share commonality in that fitting. That is a standard RV style fitting. You're going to find that no matter the camper, no matter the sewage hose, that's going to be the same fitting. It's going to be inserted the same way or connected the same way that your cap is. You have 4 prongs along the outside, 4 keyholes, put it in the halfway position, give it an 1/8 inch turn to the right. That's going to go ahead and lock it on. Now we're going to talk about how to operate these valves when we get to them here in the basement, but just keep in mind that this is where your wastewater is actually going to be dumped. If we look right beside that, we have our sewage hose storage here. This is going to utilize a little screw-on cap, and your sewage hose will just feed on right there. All right, guys, here at the rear, first thing up is going to be your power supply. This is a 30 amp, 110 volt connection. This power cord does come with the unit. It's generally about 25 to 30 feet in length. When we do go to connect that to the camper, if we take a look at that plug, we're gonna have 2 slotted receptacles and 1 L shape. If you line everything up, it's going to plug straight in. Now this is a twist lock connection. So if we rotate it an 1/8 inch to the right, that's gonna lock it in. Then we do have this secondary collar here. We can screw down and secure that connection further. It's very important that we have a nice, tight, secure connection here on the body of the camper. Now, if we go ahead and take a look at the wall side of the plug, one thing to note is we do include a 30 to 15 amp reducer. Idea being is that you could go ahead and plug this onto the end of your cord, plug this into maybe your garage or something similar, and allow you to check the functions of some things well before you take the unit out. What you wouldn't want to use this for is going to be hydro appliances like your microwave, air conditioner, things like that. This puck style reducer just doesn't dissipate heat exceptionally well. So what would be better suited for that is going to be a dog bone style reducer, which just separates the 2 ends by about 12 inches worth of cord, and it's going to dissipate heat a lot better for those hydro appliances. But for checking lights, running fans, pre-cooling refrigerator, this is going to be your guy for that. Now, I make the suggestion with every single unit that I deliver. It's very important, especially with a larger unit like this where we have a ton of stuff going on electronically. We want to make sure that we're managing and protecting that incoming power. And the only way to effectively do that is going to be with a 30 amp surge protector. If you do have any questions on what we recommend and how to use them, feel free to give our parts department a call. They'd be more than happy to further educate you on just what we have in mind here. If we take a look right beside that power cord, we have a cable satellite inlet. That's just designed to feed some secondary TV services to the unit. It's going to utilize a standard RG6 cable fitting, and it's just a pass-through connection to the designated TV areas of the camper. And then down below that, we have a couple all-weather 15 amp outlets, allow you to power some secondary devices here in the space. And then we have our outside shower. We kind of already talked about that with the water heater. Going to give you access to hot and cold water. This all does go in the compartment here. So it is kind of self-contained and held into place by closing the door. And then if we take a look up above that, we have our black tank flush. We're going to talk further about that here in just a few minutes when we talk about the proper procedure in dumping our wastewater and rinsing our tanks and things like that. Just again, keep in mind the location. We're going to talk about that when we get to the basement and further go into depth with how to actually dump those valves. Here in the basement area, just like the rest of the unit, of course, a ton of stuff going on. So first things first, we're going to talk about is how to properly drain the unit. We already talked about how to drain the water heater. These steps would essentially take place before we drain the water heater if we were looking to purge the system completely of water. If we take a look kind of down this alleyway, we're going to see a series of valves and water lines. If we go to the furthest one back here, that's going to be how we drain our freshwater holding tank. So we talked about how to fill that, and we do need to drain it before putting the unit back into service. So if the unit's going to be in service for more than 7 days, we're going to drain that freshwater holding tank. We're going to do that by opening up this valve. If we come forward a little bit more, we're going to see our low point drains. These are going to be the lowest point in the unit's plumbing. So this is how we're going to drain everything in between water source and fixture. That's why we have a hot line and a cold line. Next up, we're just going to open up those valves. It's a gravity feed system. It'll go ahead and drain that water. And then lastly, we would finish up that process by draining the water heater separate. Once we've done that, we are ready for storage. Now, if we're going one step further, which we would be introducing antifreeze into the system, we would need to bypass the water heater next. We would do that it's not going to come out on camera, but you'll have a hole here. And if you reach in, you're going to see two valves. One is the incoming line to the water heater. The other is going to be the outgoing line to the water heater. Turn both of those valves into the secondary position, and that's all there is to it. Your water heater is going to be bypassed. Now remember, once you've drained that antifreeze and you're returning the unit back to service, we need to make sure that we unbypass it so we can actually take advantage of that appliance. And then at the back of the compartment here, again, something that's very hard to get onto camera, is going to be a vacuum inlet. So what that means is that would be your introduction place for antifreeze and things like that. I'd be the first to admit it's at a semi-peculiar location, not the easiest to get to, being at the rear of the compartment, but because of the size of the unit, the manufacturer really didn't have any choice as to install it there. If you have any questions or would need kind of more in-depth pictures, feel free to give us a call. We'd be more than happy to go ahead and walk you through that process further. And then here, as we take a look further here into the basement, we have this pull-out storage, which is nice. Does have a locking mechanism here and does just go ahead and slide out. It's on rollers, help you get to your stuff that's at the rear of the unit. And then making our way here to this wall, we are going to see our slide-out boards here on the wall, and we can kind of see them doing their things. Those are for, of course, one board for each corresponding slide out. And then our jack board is going to be here on the roof. And the only reason why I bring those up in this presentation, specifically with this jack board, is again, probably something you can't see on camera, but we have a row of fuses here corresponding with each jack head or jack motor. And if I was a betting man, I'd say at some point during ownership of this camper, you're going to need to change those fuses. That's going to be the location right there. And then kind of getting out of the way further, we have our battery disconnect switch. That's going to go ahead and isolate the the battery from the 12-volt system, designed basically for periods of long-term storage. So you're storing the unit with any 12-volt system. You're going to find nominal or phantom draws throughout that system. From the day to day, it's no big deal, but compounded many months in storage or even many weeks in storage, it's going to really wear and tear on that battery system. This is a push and pull system, so if we pull it out, you're going to be on or connected. If you push it in, you're going to be disconnected, isolated. Those batteries are going to be completely out of the system. And then down below that, we have our black water valves. These are actually open right now. So with them in the closed position, that's exactly where we want to be when we're camping. So we've taken a look, we saw where the bayonet fitting is to actually dump, and we've seen our black water tank flush. We're going to talk about both of those now. Now, normal operation of these tanks is again going to be keeping these valves in the closed position. We're going to use an onboard monitor panel on the inside of the unit, and we're going to monitor those levels and only dump as necessary. So a couple scenarios where you want to dump. Of course, if the tank's indicating full, you'll want to dump. If you're changing locations, going down the road, camping somewhere else, you'll want to dump at that time as well. So once we've made our connection there at the bayonet fitting, we will generally go ahead and dump our black water first. Just go ahead and, again, it's a 6-inch pull towards us to open up that valve. Once we're satisfied, we can go ahead and close that valve. Very important that we treat this like a vacuum lock, so to speak. We want to avoid any cross-contamination or backfeeding between the two systems, so only have one valve open at the same time. So once we've closed our black water, we can go ahead and open up our gray water. What that's going to do is, since it's the relatively clean water of the two, it's going to go ahead and rinse out any shared plumbing and help rinse out our sewage hose on the way down. So once we're again satisfied with that, we think we've gotten it all, we're going to close that back off. It's at this time that we can go ahead and hook up a secondary hose to our black water tank flush and actually start flushing that tank out. So to do that, it's very important that we open up this black water valve first. So that's the first thing we want to do. Of course, there's no check valve or prevention with that system that'll keep that from potentially overflowing that black water tank. So it's very important that we only try and flush out that tank with the black water valve in the open position. It's as simple as making your connection there at that previously noted spot and rinsing that tank until, again, you're satisfied. Generally, if you have a sewage hose with a clear elbow, it gives you a better gauge of essentially how dirty your tank is. I recommend my customers to just rinse until that water runs relatively clean. All right, guys, here we are at the rear of the unit. We're gonna take a look at the remote. Now, keep in mind, when we look at the remote, our orientation is gonna be from the rear. So we're looking at the display here. We have our driver's side front, driver's side rear, passenger front, or passenger rear. And then we can operate all 4 jacks at the same time, either up or down here. Now, please keep in mind that you do have 4 independently geared motors, so inevitably one is going to run behind the rest. And when we're lifting or lowering it, we may need to kind of fine tune that specific jack. Now, to turn this on and get it paired up, we easily just push the 2 middle buttons and then the 2 top buttons. That's going to turn the remote on and sync it with the board on the underside here. Now, this is battery operated. If for whatever reason this were to run out of batteries while using it, you can go ahead and plug this directly into the board to allow you to kind of get out of that bind until you can go ahead and replace the batteries. Now, we have a little, looks like an old telephone handset connection here, and we're going to utilize this communication cord, of course, plugging it into the remote. The other end is going to go directly to the board. If we look on that board, there's going to be a remote in plug, and we're just going to go ahead and plug it in. That will allow us to, again, load and unload the unit. The only limitation being that we will be tethered here at the rear. Right next to the basement area, we are going to find our propane. This unit is going to utilize 2 20-pound propane cylinders. Definitely makes it easy if you're out there on the road and you need an exchange. These are going to be that universal barbecue style cylinders. Very easy to go ahead and pull those out to get filled and things like that. Of course, we don't even have them hooked up out here on the lot. In between the propane cylinders, we have a T-bar that's going to utilize an oversized wing nut. Again, I know you can't see that on film, but take my word that if you just reach behind this first tank, you'll go ahead and feel that wing nut. We need to loosen that and remove it. Once we've done so, that T-bar is going to go ahead and rotate out of the way. Once you're freed up there, you can go ahead and remove that primary tank. Now, you're going to see some all thread in there that's left over. You will need to go ahead and unscrew that to go ahead and remove that secondary tank. If we take a look in between the 2 cylinders, we have a automatic propane switchover regulator. This is going to be directionalized towards your primary tank or the tank that you are running off of. In this case, it's facing forward, so it's going to be drawing off of this tank. Now, in theory, if we had both of those service valves on and it used all of the tank in this cylinder, it's going to automatically switch over to that secondary propane cylinder. If we want to avoid that from happening, which some people, it goes either way, some people like that switchover, others do not. All we need to do is keep that secondary tank's valve in the closed position. Now, if we are utilizing it in that capacity of being an automatic switchover regulator, once we remove our primary tank to have it refilled, we're just going to switch that dial over to that secondary tank as we're taking this off and getting it filled. All right, guys, it's an excellent time to talk about structural maintenance with the unit. What we're going to want to do is, with most components of the unit, is get on that 90-day maintenance schedule. What we're going to do every 90 days is going to do a 360-degree inspection of the unit, and what we're focusing on is the seal. So anywhere where 2 pieces come together on this unit, they're going to utilize some sort of sealant. On the roof, we're going to find some self-leveling lap sealant, and on the body, what they're going to generally use is a 100% silicone product. What we're looking for is any degradation in those seals, any like cracking, peeling, separation of any kind, things like that. If we see that, we need to go ahead and touch that up immediately before we have any water intrusion issues. As mentioned, on the roof, they're going to be using a lap sealant. That's generally something you're going to have to source from your RV dealer. If you do see any degradation in those seals, that's not like painting with a fine brush or anything like that. You're going to actually lay that on with a heavy hand, and it's going to go ahead and kind of lay over any problem areas. On the body, we're going to use a 100% silicone product. If you do see any separation, it's best practice to go ahead and remove the complete bead and relay a new bead. Clean it up as necessary. Do your best to make it look nice and neat. Next up is going to be our folding assist handle here. As we can see, it's in the outward position, the usable position. When we're going down the road, we just lift up on it, fold it against the door. That's not only going to help further secure the door, but it's going to keep this from kind of sticking out further than you would need it to. If we take a look at the door, this unit is going to be equipped with keyless entry. Now you'll have a specific code here, and just like with any kind of keyless entry, you type in that code that's going to allow you access into the unit, keep you from having to carry your keys and things like that with you. And then we have our steps here. Now these operate very straightforward. We're going to fold the bottom one up first, and then the next set of steps over that. At that time, they will kind of fold in one more time. And I kind of have this in the halfway position, but there is one more motion to that we do need to like tuck it all in there into the camper, finish pushing that forward and things like that. On the way out, they give you this little grip bar that's going to make it easier. Again, it's kind of wants to do everything at the same time, so it will want to kind of fold out and pull out at the same time, but it is very easy and it is a nice fluid motion there. Moving on here, just a little bit of storage here. Now we have some battery wires in here for the battery system, but other than that, it is just going to be some storage. And then we see that we have a couple speakers here. If we take a look up top, we have our hood vent. I know it's in a weird location, but that hood vent, believe it or not, needs to be open and closed with you. So you're going to need to carry like maybe a small step ladder or something like that, or a poker stick or something to allow you to open that. It is just held in there or held down with 2 tabs. The reason why we need to open it up, again, that's the hood vent for the stove. We need to open it up so it's going to effectively vent vent those gases and things to the exterior of the unit, and we need to close it before going down the road. That way we're not going to have any dust, dirt, debris making its way into the unit. If I carry on further, we have our refrigerator panel here. Now this is, again, not going to really fit in that customer serviceable unit category. Biggest thing with this is going to be installing those bug screens, making sure we're keeping any critters and things like that out of the unit. Other than that, I recommend when you're doing your other 90-day maintenance schedules and things like that, that we do go ahead and give this a visual inspection, make sure you're not seeing any frayed wires, any nests or anything like that. And as long as the appliance is operating correctly, you are going to be good to go. All right, guys, we made it through the exterior of the unit. We're going to hop on the inside and take a look at those appliances and accessories. Right inside the door here, first up is going to be our Cummins Onan generator start switch. When we go ahead and fire this off, we're going to hold it in the stop or prime position until we see this red or that orange light come on. Once we've done so, we're going to go ahead and transition over here and try and start that. We do want to make sure that when starting it, that we're not going to over crank that unit. Generally, I will count to 10 seconds in my head, making sure I don't do that. And then once we go ahead and fire that generator up, it does utilize a transfer switch. So that switch over from shore power or 12 volt over to the generator is going to be seamless, kind of happening in the background. And then down below that, we have our solar charge controller panel. So this is going to give you kind of information as in where your battery voltage sits, how many amp hours you're taking in over solar currently, and things like that. These buttons up here, you know, in its base capacity, they don't have much function. You can use those to kind of sort through the information and things like that. This last button here is going to do that for you. But basically, this is just an information center. It's going to be the brains behind the solar installation, essentially taking in energy as necessary, charging those batteries to their max capacity. And then once they are fully charged, it's going to pay special attention not to overcharge them. And then down below, we got quite a bit going on here. First up is going to be our tank monitors. We talked about how on the outside, when it comes to our water tanks, our fresh water, black water, and gray water holding tanks, that we do want to monitor their level here on the inside. And we're only going to dump as necessary. So this is where we're going to be taking a look at those indicators. And as you look here at this display, the more light you see here on the display, the fuller that particular thing that we are trying to evaluate is going to be. Battery will read full here on this display. That battery is going to read full anytime you are plugged into shore power. Since we are out here kind of filming remotely on the lot, we do just have battery on here. If we were plugged into shore power, it would indicate full. It's going to indicate full anytime you are plugged into shore power. For us right now, it is indicating at a third full. To get a real readout, again, just to kind of finish that thought, you do need to go ahead and unplug from shore power and then, of course, evaluate at that time. And then down below that, we have our porch light. That's going to be the light right above the door here. And then we have our security light, which is going to be the underlighting underneath the wings, which is a really cool effect when it is dark out. We then have our water pump switch. We talked about on the outside how that's going to pressurize that potable water system, draw that water up from the tank to the fixtures, and ultimately make it usable. Right next to this water pump switch, we're going to find the propane water heater switch. Now the way that particular appliance works is right when we flip this switch, it starts going through its lighting cycle. It will try and light 3 times. If it does not light by the end of that third try, it will stop trying. Once it does that, it's going to illuminate this DSI fault light. Now we're going to see that come on and off as it's going through its lighting cycles. But ultimately, if we come back 5 minutes later and it's still on, that means it's done trying to light essentially. So sometimes either you're out of propane gas, you have forgotten to turn on the service valve up top, or you know, oftentimes it just takes a little bit of time to get from the gas to get from the tank to the appliance. In any event, if that does happen for you and that light is staying on, of course, investigate, make sure you have propane, make sure that the tank valves are open. And then if it's neither of those two things, just flip the switch off, flip it back on. It'll start a second lighting cycle. Generally, as long as you do have propane gas, it's going to light up on that first try of that second cycle. And then down below here, we have our main overhead lights. Now these are on a dimmer, so we can kind of use those to, of course, select the intensity of those interior lights. These are going to be the overhead lights. You'll have smaller lights along the slide outs and things like that that are going to be controlled on the actual switch or on the actual light itself. And we'll make sure we demo those as we make our way through the camper. So down below here are going to be our slide out switches. They are set up in their orientation as to where they are on the camper. So this is going to be our driver's side slide out, passenger slide room here, and our rear slide out. It's important on how we put these in and out. Of course, we are going to want to make sure that we do go the full direction of travel. So if we're going out, we want to go fully out, fully in. We want to avoid short bursts and partial openings. Also, the kind of order in which we put them out is important as well. Now, this rear slide out is going to always go out first, and then it doesn't matter if you do the passenger or the driver's side after, as long as this one comes out first. And then on the way in, you're going to do the passenger side or the driver's side, both of those first, and then bring in the rear slide out last. That's very important. These campers can flex and things like that, and the tolerances are just crazy, crazy tight. So if you're in a position where you're flexing the camper and you are operating the slides in the incorrect series, they can actually rub against each other. So that's just something to keep in aware. Make sure that this rear slide out is the first to go out and the last one to come in. And then down below that, we have our awning switch. This is going to be a momentary switch, so we can really choose how far out we run that awning. It is clearly marked in or out. One thing we do want to make sure is when we are extending that awning, we want to pay special attention and make sure we're not overextending it. So make sure once it reaches that max position, you run out of cloth, that you allow it to stop there. And then we have our awning light switches awning light switch right here. It's going to be on a lighted switch just in case that one goes ahead and gets turned on during the day. Or inadvertently, so you know it is on, and you could of course turn it off. You're not wasting battery and things like that. Also down here we have our fire extinguisher. Now it is very important that we do test all of our safety equipment every time we take the unit out. Our fire extinguisher of course fits into that category. For this particular unit, we're going to go ahead and push down on that green button. If it springs back, we're good to go. If it does anything else, it's time to go ahead and replace it. And then lastly, we have a little 15 amp dual outlet down here just for any 110 volt appliances we would like to go ahead and operate in this space. Another very important piece of safety equipment is going to be your carbon monoxide and smoke alarm. We have a combination unit here, so they are going to be located in the same space. This runs off a 9-volt battery. Of course, it's very important to keep a spare 9-volt battery with the unit in case this were to indicate that you were running low. It's going to chirp at you like a traditional smoke alarm will. We want to make sure we have a battery that can, of course, keep that going throughout our camping trip. It does have a test button, and we are going to test our safety equipment every single time we take the unit out. That is going to be located right here on the unit. At the couch area here, we're going to take a look at the functionality of that. First thing up is going to be removing the little armrests. So we will get those out of the way. From there, if we are going to go ahead and lay this out into bed, it's very easily. You just go ahead and grab from the bottom. Now it's going to kind of stay in that position. From there, we just are going to push it towards the window till we hear a couple of clicks. Once we've done that, it's going to go ahead and lay down flat for us. And then on the way back up, we put it up until we hear that click again. And from there, it just goes ahead and flips back for us. Now, if we take note on the underside, there is a pull-out storage drawer there. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the shades that you're going to have ran throughout this unit on each window, of course. And these are just your kind of standard pull-down from the top friction shades. They're going to hold their tension on the side string. So as the camper ages, if they loosen up or anything like that, it is very easy to go ahead and retension them so they will hold their position. And then also we have the crank out style windows here as well. Of course, this window is in the open position, so we are closing it, but in either direction it is just going to be twisting this knob here. And then if we take a look here at your recliners, these are pretty straightforward. You're going to find that the handles are going to be on the right side of each one. With that out, we'll stay in that outward position. We're going to want to push from the front back towards the chair to go ahead and shut that. You do have a little bit of storage and a couple cup holders there as well. And then some magnetic latches that hold these tables in position. And then ultimately, if you'd like to go ahead and get rid of them, you can go ahead and pull them out as well and store them away for you. On the ceiling here, we're going to see our high-powered exhaust fan. It is a crank open design. So if we go ahead and open up that vent lid, of course we can see the daylight there. And then we just choose our speed here. So we have 3 speeds of intensity. And this is again going to be an exhaust fan. So the idea being is that we will open up our windows, we'll run this in reverse. It's going to create a cross breeze throughout the unit. And this is powerful enough to do so. You may also notice that you do have a bus fuse holder here. In the event that this does not work for you or is giving you any issues, number one place you're going to check is in replacing that little 4-amp fuse. Above my head here, you're going to notice your lower air box to your air conditioner. Now this does have filters. They will need to be cleaned from time to time. To do so, you are just going to put your 2 fingers here on these tabs. You're going to go ahead and remove those kind of louvers that are on the bottom or the grating. And that filter is just going to slide right out. You do have one on both sides. We're going to go ahead and remove those filters, rinse them off in the sink, let them dry, and go ahead and replace that. We're going to do that as needed, so you're going to see dust and debris here depositing itself on these louvers. So we're just going to take care of that as it's needed. Taking us down here into the TV area. Now this TV is on a mount that is multi-positional. So we're going to go ahead and pull this little beaded chain here. That's going to unlock it. And then that will actually fold out into the common area. Now it doesn't pivot other than what you see. It does kind of just swing out here. So if you're sitting in the recliners, then you can of course directionalize it that way. Or if you're sitting here at the rear couch, you can directionalize it that way as well. Now if we go ahead and swing that out of the way, we're going to find our antenna booster. Now this is going to be connected to a omnidirectional digital over-the-air television antenna that we have on the roof. We go ahead and apply power to it by turning this switch on. Once we've done that, we're going to do a channel search through the television. It's going to automatically seek out our best signal and bring in our programming dependent on that. Below the antenna booster here, we're going to find an HDMI plug. Now what that's doing is actually connecting the television through the wall to our Jensen unit, which is down below. What that's going to allow us to do is essentially just feed DVDs and things, entertainment, through the Jensen unit to the TV. So that's going to need to be connected to the, of course, television and then the wall plate here. And then down below that we have a 12-volt cigarette lighter style receptacle. And then we have a couple USBs hanging out down there as well, paired with your 110 volt outlets as well. And then we can actually take a look at that Jensen unit here. Now this is going to, of course, give us AM, FM radio, Bluetooth, CD, DVD, AM, FM radio, things like that. Does HDMI ARC with the television like we discussed previously. You do have a couple zones of speaker. One is going to be for the bedroom. The other is going to be for the living space out here. And then we also have outside speakers. Generally, A is going to be right here in this room, B will be the bedroom, and C is going to be the outside speakers. And again, they are all controlled separately with the volume knob. A little bit of storage here underneath, but again, nothing too crazy or substantial. And then that brings us to our converter here. This is where our 110 volt and 110 volt appliances are going to be breakered or fused. On the left side, we have our 12 volt. They're going to utilize a replaceable blade style fuse. You can either pick that up in our parts department here at Princess Craft, or any auto parts store is going to carry those as well. They are easily sourceable. Make sure you do have some spares in the event that you would need them. And then here on the right side, we're going to see our 110 volt resettable breakers, which is the same variant that you're probably used to seeing in your breaker box at home. As we make our way here into the kitchen area, first things up is going to be the stainless steel double bay sink there. We have a pull down sprayer, which is going to let us utilize multiple spray modes on the head there as well. And then we have a separate drinking water faucet there that's going to actually have an inline filter in place to give you some filtered water. That filter is going to be located underneath the sink here, and it's going to be in the far back corner. So we kind of see that with this corresponding holder. And we are going to want to replace that from time to time. Dependent on the filter, they will have a different shelf life essentially. And we will just connect it from its corresponding fittings on each side, and then go ahead and screw in a new one. Next up, you may notice this extremely large, extremely capable high point microwave and convection combo. In terms of functionality, it's going to be very much as to what you're used to. You have your different modes here up top, of course some preset time and temperatures, and then we're going to see our number pad, start and stop. Again, kind of your typical things you're going to find. And then if we take a look inside, you have your convection rack here. You also have a grill rack here too as well, and also a manual to tell you how to use it in more in depth. And then if we look here at the bottom, that's how we're going to turn on our light and fan down here. Of course, that's going to be tied into the microwave, so it is a 110 volt appliance. Out here on the lot, we're not plugged into shore power, so we don't have function to those right now. But they are going to be operated right here on that microwave display. That takes us down here to your cooktop. What this is going to utilize is a small piezo igniter here. So we're going to go ahead and rotate that igniter clockwise. First, we're going to go ahead and put our indicator here on the flame, and then we would rotate this clockwise until, of course, we've seen that flame at the burner. So it is very easy to operate there. Tons of storage here on the underside. We're going to find your backup camera monitor, as well as a couple other components, service manuals, things like that. And then again, you just got a ton of storage down here. If we go ahead and take a look at the refrigerator, our controls, of course, are not going to be out here into the space. To access them, we need to go ahead and open up the freezer door. And that's going to go ahead and show us the eyebrow panel here, which is just going to have a single on-off switch, as well as a mode switch here. So it's kind of default setting is going to be auto. On auto, it's going to default to 110 volt electricity. If that's not available, it will automatically start lighting on gas, or if that gets interrupted, it will light on gas. And then if we want to, or we want to go ahead and run it on gas specifically, we need to go ahead and depress that switch. We saw when I pushed the button in, that auto switch illuminated. If I go ahead and depress that switch, that's going to kick us into that gas mode. If there are any problems with lighting it on gas, it's going to go ahead and illuminate this check light. What that means is it has generally exhausted its lighting cycle and has not lit, very similar to the water heater. We're just going to go ahead and continuously turn this on and off until we see that light on propane gas. Next up, we're going to find our Excel Thermostat. Now, this is not only going to control the air conditioner, but it's going to control the furnace as well. As we look at the appliance here, we're going to find a single mode button here, and then up or down to control temperature. If we go ahead and cycle through the modes from the off position, so let me go ahead and reset it. First thing is going to be our fan speed. Now you have a low and a high option there. Of course, that's just going to circulate air through the unit. That's not going to be air conditioner. If we hit that one more time, that's going to take us into cool high, which is of course air conditioning with a high fan speed. Now, if you're in either one of these cool high or cool low modes, it doesn't really matter what this thermostat is set to. That fan is going to continue to run even once it's hit that temperature. To actually get that to be communicating with the thermostat correctly, we need to go into the auto mode, which is going to be one setting further. You see cool, low, auto, which means it's going to be, of course, air conditioning with a low fan speed, and then it's going to automatically switch off once it reaches that temperature. We'll see that same setting there in in high with a high fan speed. And then if I go ahead and hit this one more time, that's going to take us into our furnace mode. In that furnace mode, that blower motor is going to come on immediately. 16 seconds after that, it will ignite. By that 30-second mark, it's going to be producing noticeable heat. In a unit of this size, it's not out of the ordinary for that to go ahead and set off that smoke alarm within the first 15 minutes of operation. Per the manufacturer of the furnace, that's completely acceptable. It's not only is that efficiency rating going up within that first 15 minutes of operation, but it's also burning any road debris or dirt that has deposited on the furnace. So if that happens, of course, it's just going to be something you have to deal with for just those first 15 minutes of operation. And then if I go ahead and hit that one more time, that's going to be through with all of our modes, and it will go into the off position. All right, so here in the restroom, first thing you're going to notice is your exhaust fan. Now this is going to utilize a standard RV style exhaust fan. So we go ahead and crank that lid up, and then we do just have a standard on off push button switch here. Again, that's just an exhaust fan that's designed to pull any moisture from the air when you're here taking a shower, things like that. We'll go ahead and make sure we close that. You can see you do have a little bit of storage there right below that. And if we take a little bit of time to talk about your toilet here, now this is going to be a pedal style flush, so your pedal will be on the floor somewhere. I can't see it, but down here on the right side of the bowl is going to be your pedal flush. Now it's going to be a light press to go ahead and feed water to the bowl. Not a bad idea to keep water inside the bowl. What that's going to do is when we do go ahead and flush, it's going to help keep those bad smells down as we're flushing, and then it will be a full press to the floor to actually flush our ways down the toilet. Now when it comes to chemical treatments, deodorizers, sensor cleaners, all of those products are going to be introduced right here at the toilet. Of course, you're going to follow the specifications outlined on the specific product that you're using, but they're all going to share commonality with it, that they are introduced here to the Blackwater system from the toilet. And then of course above my head we have our skylight. If we go ahead and turn around, we're going to notice that we do have an adjustable shower head here, so we can go ahead and position that up or down dependent on our needs. On the shower head, you're going to see an on-off switch. What we're going to use that for is to conserve water consumption. 6 gallons of water doesn't generally translate to an exceptionally long shower. So what you're probably going to find yourself doing is like a military Navy style shower, where we're turning that water flow on and off several times throughout that shower to again help save water. Instead of having to do that here at the fixture, we have an on-off button here at the head that's going to allow us to do that much easier. And this is just a standard hand washing sink. If we are going to go ahead and take a shower, we just need to pull this diverter into the upward position. That's going to feed water from, instead of the fixture here, up to the shower head. And then lastly, we have a medicine cabinet here, which is just going to utilize a magnetic catch there to keep that closed. And then we have our toilet paper storage down here as well. All right, so here we are in the cab over. First thing up is going to be our emergency exit window. It's very important to take note of those in case your entry door were to be blocked, again, with some sort of emergency. It's very important that we can exit the unit from a secondary location. This is going to be that location. These are very easy to operate, not only as a normal window, but in the event of an emergency as well. We have a little handle here. It has a plastic keeper Once we've done that, we can just go ahead and open it. Now it'll stay open in that position. That's going to be your normal window operation. In the event of an emergency, we would go ahead and rip this screen out of the way, and that window is actually going to go full open, kind of like a doggy door, to again allow you to exit from this space. Here, as we make our way further into the cab over, we're going to go ahead and see our Jensen TV. Same television that we have up front, and we can pass those cable services back here into the bedroom, as well as connection, I should say a connection to that Jensen stereo unit here, utilizing these auxiliary connections here. And then we have our lights for back here. They're also going to be on a dimmer switch. We can see how that works. On the other side of the cabinetry here, we're going to have our lights, reading lights. They are easy on off on the switch. And then here on this side, we have some 12-volt cigarette lighter style receptacle, as well as a couple USB chargers as well. And then on the other side of the bed, you're going to have two 15-amp outlets. This will allow you to charge any devices in any capacity. And then right above my head here, we have our hike vent, which we see the blackout shade is in place. We also have a screen option there as well. That's going to keep any critters from flying in here when we actually have this open. Now to open it, you're going to have a little push button release. So if we push that, we can see that handle springs back down for us. And then we just go ahead and pull towards the front of the unit to go ahead and open that. We do have a couple different positions that we can actually position that, so it doesn't have to be full open. And then when we go ahead and close it, we do just want to make sure that we are pushing that all the way up and making sure that it is locked. That way it's not going to blow open for us. Before we go ahead too far here into the cab over, I do just want to show you the storage space that we have on the underside. That does run the full length of the bed, so you can fit quite a bit of clothes and things like that. I'm pretty sure that's basically what they had in mind, but feel free to use it for any long storage that you may have there. All right, guys, that just about covers it. If you've made it this far, we thank you very much for your time. If you do have any questions or concerns, either give us a call or comment below. That just about covers it. Thanks so much. Take it easy.